like to call our meeting to order, and first order of business is to, of course, have our roll call. So, Madam Clerk. Let me do this.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena.
Present.
Councilmember Adam.
Here.
Councilmember McNamee.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones.
Here.
And Mayor Engler.
Here. And please, if we can all rise and pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good, thank you. We are going to go a little bit out of order tonight. We do have a pretty full agenda, and in the interest of time, I would like to read the adjournment in memory at this time to accommodate the family members who are all here and who are in attendance, and also those watching on TV. So if we can just take a moment, let me see. Oh, hold on. I've got it. Hold on 1 second. Okay, tonight we will be adjourning the City Council meeting in the memory of a distinguished community member, Avie Brimhall. Avie married 60 years to our city manager emeritus, Grant Brimhall, passed away on February 3rd. Grant was an extraordinary Thousand Oaks public servant from 1978 to 1998. Avie and Grant were a team, and you couldn't mention Grant's accomplishments without mentioning Avie. After graduating from Temple City High School in 1961, Avie attended Brigham Young University, where she studied education and performed as a cougarette, one of the university's precision drill team members. At BYU, she and Grant met. Grant was the president of the BYU Ballroom Dancer group, which I did not know. I'm very impressed. And the two of them would go on dates whenever the best bands were on campus were playing. Grant and Avie were married in Mesa, Arizona in 1962. They shared love and faith was the foundation of their marriage and home that they would create together. 6 children, 36 grandchildren, 24 great-grandchildren have followed since. Avie's life was marked by charity, and she dedicated her time to others. She was fiercely supportive of local schools and an advocate for students. She spent countless hours volunteering in elementary classrooms and volunteered to teach early morning seminars for youth. Later in life, she served with her husband on missionary work in the Philippines and together as Temple president and matron in Los Angeles. When Avie passed away, she was surrounded by her husband and children, Tammy, Michelle, Brett, Becky, Dana, and Lindy. Anyone who knew her will remember a life well marked by the way she made others feel loved, welcome, and at home. She will be greatly missed. If I could just impose on everybody, if the family would like to come forward, we'll get a nice picture in front of the dais here, and we can join you out front and make this a real nice photo for you. Please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, just wanted to state that I, on behalf of the City of Thousand Oaks, I attended the memorial service for Avis, and it was absolutely moving, and it was very emotional. And I was so happy to learn so much more about your wife, your mom. She was an incredible, incredible person, strong person. So our deepest sympathies.
Go ahead. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I think this is about the sixth time I've been in the council chambers since my departure a few years ago. This is a joyful occasion in many respects, a very touching one and humbling one for me. I had to explain to my wife why city council meetings went so long. And I had to do that for 1,393 council meetings. So I loved the way that she supported and sustained and dreamed about this glorious city. She loved it. She loves it still. My grandchildren are blessed because of her insights. She endured 20-something performance reviews, several elections, and all of those things that needed to happen to make the democratic form of governance work so well here in this community. I commend you. Almost every day I drive around the city, and for years Avi and I would take 2 hours each morning, Sunday accepted, and we drive around the city and look at this marvelous place we call home. You are doing a magnificent job of keeping our community a truly outstanding place. I commend you and thank you. Thank you for all the stuff you take to make this place work so well for so many and to be a blessing to so many because of what you do. I am extremely grateful. May God bless you. May you have peace some of the time. Turbulence a little bit sometimes because that keeps us on our toes. But I just want you to know how grateful I am to see what's happening in the city. I love your city manager. I commend him for how he is doing the job and his staff. And I think that your city attorney is keeping him honest, and that's a good thing. City managers tend to drift a little bit. Stacy, you know that. But great things are happening here, and I thank you and pray that God's blessings will be yours. I'm going to take my kids and grandkids and see if they'll take me out for a sandwich or something.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grant.
Next, and this is one of the great things about being back in person, is that we have some presentations to make. And so I will, some proclamations to give out. So I will take a minute, move down to the other microphone, and we'll be able to take care of that. So hold on 1 second. This particular proclamation is near and dear to my heart. I'd like to call down Hannah Weirs. Come on down, Hannah. Hannah is the Pacific Coast Board Chair of the American Red Cross, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight. As you know, the Red Cross, my wife and I both volunteered quite a bit. My wife is still a heavy volunteer, and I'm proud to present you with this proclamation on behalf of the entire City of Council, designating March as National Red Cross Month. So would you like to say a couple words?
Sure.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Here you go. Let me get the proclamation. There you go. You bet.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Engler and Thousand Oaks Council members. I'm Hannah Weirs, and I am proud to represent the American Red Cross today as a board member and a volunteer. March is a very special time of year for us at the Red Cross, where we celebrate American Red Cross Month to honor the people who make our life-saving mission possible. This annual tradition began nearly 80 years ago when President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared the first Red Cross Month in March 1943. In each year since, every U.S. president has followed his honored tradition. As we celebrate this year's Red Cross Month celebration, I'm so proud to recognize the incredible work done every day. The unwavering compassion displayed by Red Crossers is nothing short of amazing. Despite 2 years of a global pandemic, we continue to be there for individuals and families who need us most. A dedication that truly embodies our vital mission to deliver support when help can't wait during emergencies. As we look ahead, we know that disasters are never if, but when. And we thank you for your unwavering support. In closing, we invite you, the public, to join us by making a financial donation, rolling up a sleeve to donate blood, or being a Red Cross volunteer. Thanks again for recognizing the American Red Cross. Good evening.
My wife, Sue, just signed up for deployment because things are happening back in the Midwest and whatnot, so we'll see if we're going to have her in town for a little bit, but she's happy to be there. Very good. Thank you. Next, I would like to welcome Denise and David Belko, who are ambassadors for the Donate Life. Donate Life is the nonprofit organ and tissue donor registration dedicated to saving lives of thousands of Californians awaiting life-saving transplant. The Belko family became involved in organ donor advocacy after their son, Michael, at the age of 20, saved the lives of 8 people through organ donation. The City Council encourages Thousand Oaks residents to participate in the Donate Life California Donor Registry, and we are therefore proclaiming the month of April as DMV Donate Life California Month. So let me give you this proclamation, and would you like to say a few words? Come on.
I'm Grandma. So I would just like to say how proud I was of Michael, my grandson. As a teenager, he became interested in the Chinese culture and studied Chinese, became fluent in it. It became very handy when he was a student at UC Irvine, and 3 of the UCs made a trip to China. When they got there, it was realized he was the only person in their group that could speak Chinese. So he did the interpreting and translation for them during the trip. But the thing I'm most proud about with Michael is that as a teenager, when he was 16 and got his driver's license, he had that pink dot put on his license to show that he wanted to donate organs. He talked to the family at the time, and we just sort of listened but didn't do anything, and I'm ashamed to say it wasn't until Michael passed away that I put the dot on my license. And you might think, why would a grandma donate organs? Well, we don't have to just donate organs. Tissue and skin is also very important, no matter what age you are. So I encourage everybody to sign up to donate.
Thank you very much. I've got the pink dot, and it's true. It doesn't really matter. There's organ tissues that can be given, and anybody at any age can be a donor. So thank you very much for being here. It's our honor to have April as Donor Month. Would you like a picture? Let's get another picture of everybody. And then finally tonight, it's the proclamation recognizing a day that has become nearly synonymous with the character of our city. It's Earth Day, has been recognized in 192 countries around the world, and they pledged to protect our natural environment. In Thousand Oaks, we combine this event with Arbor Day, in which we commit to preserve and enhance our urban forest. This will be the city's 23rd annual recognition of Arbor Earth Day, and we pride ourselves on our commitment to our environmental sustainability, both in our municipal operations and in our community. As we develop our climate and environmental action plan, we will identify and commit to further actions to ensure our sustainability for future generations. I'd like to have Rod Cordova come down. There's Rod. Very good. And he's an analyst in our sustainability division. And I want you to tell us about what's happening for Earth Day today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Engler and Council. Yeah, the Sustainability Division is excited to host the Arbor Earth Day celebration once again after a 2-year hiatus because of the pandemic. This year's event will be held on Saturday, April 9th at the Thousand Oaks Community Center, located right next to Thousand Oaks High School. The event will run from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And it's a free community event. We have a number of eco-inspired activities that we have planned, including an electric vehicle display area where the public can come and look at and ask questions about electric vehicles from the actual owners of the vehicles. We're going to be hosting a number of environmental workshops where the public can learn about healthy soils, drought-tolerant landscaping, electric vehicles. We're going to have some bicycle activities with a bicycle, what we call bicycle rodeo. It's a safety course where kids can learn about bicycle safety. CRPD is going to be hosting a bicycle collection where they will collect used and new bicycles in which they then donate to underserved youth in the community. So they'll be doing a collection. We'll have electric bikes on hand and a number of other kids' activities. We're actually really excited because Athens Services is going to be bringing a very large inflatable trash truck bounce house where the kids can climb up into this inflatable trash truck and bounce around in it. So we're excited to have that. And some eco-art activities for kids and games. And we're also going to be offering free compost and free plant giveaways to the public. So, and also be raffling off compost bins and rain barrels. So we encourage everyone to come out to the event on Saturday, April 9th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Thousand Oaks Community Center. To learn more about the event, we do have a webpage, and that is www.toaks.co/Earth Day. So we hope to see you there.
Thank you. Hand this off to you.
Yes.
Do you want to pick?
Absolutely.
Let's go.
All right.
One more picture. Let's go. Okay, next up, Madam Clerk, we have our public comments. Can you please read the introduction?
This is a time and place for public comments. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 3 individuals have requested to speak, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Very good. Our first speaker today is Wendy Zimmerman, and I believe she is online.
Good evening.
Oh, hello. How are you?
Good. I think we are connected, so I will begin. I'm Wendy Zimmerman from Newbury Park. City's planning staff sent me to you to address my problems regarding fees and opposition to an approval at the Kaneho Gateway Shopping Center. Your 230 packet has extensive information and documentation from me on the hows, whys, and wherefores pertaining to my public comment. Charging me $1,515 to appeal an administrative decision that should have had a public hearing is wrong. I have no financial interest in the shopping center. Unfortunately, I stand to be harmed by increased traffic, pollution, and the loss of the quiet enjoyment of my neighborhood. The approved plans allow for a drive-through to be built in our backyards with ingress and egress on a street that is already overloaded and dangerous. I will not be the only one who will suffer if this is built in the current location where it is planned. City of TO needs to change its ways and stop violating the civil rights of persons who disagree with its decisions. Instead of telling complainants to talk to the hand and blocking such complaints with fees that people can't afford or hoops so high and small that we cannot possibly jump through them is unconscionable. City needs to create a path that leads to effective and affordable problem solving. I looked for a path, so to a limited extent did planning. City doesn't have one. City's policy that charges exorbitant fees to persons who have health, safety, and quality of life interests at stake violates the First and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. Pay up or shut up and don't complain is bad government as well as unethical behavior. It is much like charging an illegal poll tax to vote. Those who can pay get a say. If you don't, you won't. City's message to me and others is that City doesn't care what we think or if we may suffer harm because of City's negligent action. City apparently just wants money, and lots of it. I'm not among the rich folks who can afford to throw money around to fight for what is right for me and my neighbors. Those of us who live in Newbury Park are repeatedly treated like the poor relatives who live on the wrong side of the tracks. You can and must do better. Tonight, Council needs to direct staff to study this matter and to put it on a Council agenda for further discussion, a proper hearing, and policy changes. Those are the first steps. In the meantime, staff can tell the property owner there is a stay and City is not ready for them to break ground on the new businesses. Then, all appropriate hearings may be held and plans for the shopping center can be approved so that they work for all of us. Please, do the right thing. Stop the greedy madness. None of us can afford it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Next up, we have Amy Adams.
Hi there, it's Adams with an S.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So thanks for having me, City Council. To follow that other representative, I feel very underprepared. But I became a resident of Thousand Oaks October 25th. And the day that I moved in, I called the city. Basically, there are beautiful pine trees that line Lynn Road, as I'm a resident of the Wildwood area. And I was really concerned about some branches that were dangling. Currently, there is a orange cone on Lynn Road with a branch about 20 feet long. It's been there for probably about 2 months or so. I've called about every month about getting the trees trimmed, as I feel it is a safety issue. I've been given a job number, but was told that it could take 6 to 8 months. If my math serves me correctly, that would lead us right into April. After a big storm, yesterday, I called again over the concern over the branches. The representative, her name was Adrian, she let me know that Chris, the supervisor, would be in contact. I still haven't heard from him. I was also told arborists may come out to take a look at the health of the trees. So the job code I have is LS 55570. At this time, it's still delayed as they're telling me they need more bids. So I'm just worried for my property. I'm worried for residents walking under it as the trees are up against Lynn. So I'm hoping that you'll hear my concern today, maybe work a little swifter than the 6 to 8 months, as you know, October is when I brought the concern. So thank you for your time, and I hope there's a quick resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Douglas Berg, who I believe is in the House, is that correct? He's on video. Thank you. Yes, Douglas Berg, you're up.
He left Zoom, so he's no longer on.
Thank you. So we just had the two speakers, and Mr. City Manager, do you have some comments?
Absolutely. So just addressing the two speakers, the first speaker was speaking about the Kaneho Gateway Center. The owner of that shopping center has applied to do some modifications to that center and has gone through the planning process. And in that planning process, everything has been reviewed per our policies, and there's been quite a bit of communication back and forth on this particular issue with some concerned residents out there, and some discussion with the Kaneho MAC as well regarding this particular center. So be happy to continue that dialogue in terms of questions with the residents. I'll let the city attorney address the constitutional questions, but we have an adopted fee schedule that relates to appeals and those sorts of things, as the council's aware, and that is not based on profit. That is based on cost of service for providing those. So that is in place for that reason. I'll let City Attorney address anything on the constitutional side.
Yeah, just briefly, our municipal code sets forth our regulations regarding processing of development applications. And in this case, an administrative hearing was held. And the fact that cities create appeal processes that include fees do not result in a constitutional violation.
And then on the latter item regarding pine trees on Lynn Road, council, and I think the community knows, we take tree assessments very, very seriously here in this community. So, and I'm confident, since there's a job number here, there's some active work that's happening. And so Public Works Director Cliff Finley and I have already been in touch. He'll follow up with the resident directly tomorrow morning and give a realistic time assessment and update on condition of that pine tree.
Mayor Engler?
Yes, madam.
That would be me. I was just wondering, do we have a way to raise our hand on this iPad? Not yet. Okay.
Very good.
All right.
Did you have a comment or a question?
Yes. I was wondering, if residents had attended that administrative hearing about the gateway application, would they have been able to and voice their opposition? Would there have been an automatic hearing before the Planning Commission, or how would that have happened?
No, that appeal would have to be filed by an appellant.
And just to clarify, the way our development program works is we have various types of considerations that are done. There are some projects that are processed ministerially with no discretion on behalf of the staff, and those are processed over the counter. There are some permits and projects that are processed over the counter that do involve some discretion. There are some projects that staff can process administratively over the counter, but must give notice to the public, and a member of the public can request an administrative hearing, and that is free of charge. We do not charge for that, although there are costs involved in that. And from that point on, if a member wants to appeal that administrative decision, then they must file an appeal and pay the appeal fees in order to take it to the Planning Commission. So this is a program that was adopted by the City Council. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, we do take changes to the code to the City Council. For example, I think in the last 5 years, we've actually tried to streamline some of the less controversial types of projects and allow them to be processed administratively to streamline it in order to not cause delays for certain types of projects. This one is not a type of a project that the city council requires a full public hearing on, so it would have been processed over the counter, but for the fact that someone or more than one person asked for an administrative hearing, which we do provide for free.
Thank you for that clarification.
Very good. There's no more public comments, so we'll close public comments right now. The next up on our agenda is our consent calendar. Fellow council members, are we?
Mayor, if I could just state, we do have 2 public speakers, so I suggest we take them first.
Okay, very good. We have two public speakers on the consent calendar. Kat Selm is our first speaker. She is on the Zoom. Kat, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Kat, and I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. And I wanted to talk tonight about consent calendar item E. And I understand that council is not voting to amend the general plan for this project tonight, and that the vote is just to extend the expiration date for filing applications. However, I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk about housing. It's nothing that you haven't heard from us before, but I just wanted to reiterate some points that I find important about housing in this city. While this project may provide over 200 units, several of which will be in the low or very low income category, the project's mixed use and provides nearby bike lanes and bus stops, and all of these elements of the project are vital as we're in a housing affordability crisis, and we need to reduce our emissions drastically. While walkable and bikeable projects where people can live near their workplaces are a great way to reduce emissions, I would encourage the city and the developers that want to build here to future-proof their projects by reaching beyond Title 24 standards to anticipate the forthcoming housing standards, the health impacts of fossil gas, and the desires of future tenants by building all electric. IMT's project in Tio Ranch community at the former Kmart property is a perfect example of developers creating a safer, healthier living space for Tio residents. Gas infrastructure locks in emissions for decades to come, even as our grid greens more and more each year, and we can't keep building and living business as usual. The science is clear about this. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and the health of the planet. Any further delay in concerted action will miss a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Elm. Next up, we have Roseanne Witt. Ms. Witt.
Hi, I'm Roseanne from TO. Our families all deserve affordable, local, clean energy to reliably power our lives and free us from volatile, costly gas and oil that pollute our air and water and make our climate chaotic. Heat, drought, and fire all show we need giant steps towards the better, more stable world we all want. As one of 295,000 Woolsey wildfire evacuees, I urge you to insist on significant health and climate safety features in all future TO development. IPCC's February climate report urgently warns our window for cutting GHG pollution will soon hit hard limits that make adaptation impossible. Our current path leads to irreversible impacts and self-reinforcing feedback loops. Army Colonel Larry Wilkerson advises, read that report. You will conclude you do not want to live in a 1.5 degree world. You probably can't live in a 2 degree world, and we are very likely headed for a 3 or 4 degree world. Western droughts are already eroding farm productivity and food and water security. Ventura County farmers warn our farm economy may end within 10 years if change doesn't come soon, as heat waves make it too hot to grow food and work outside, and crop yields crash. Every fraction of extra heat puts billions of people and trillions of dollars at risk. Nearly half of humanity is living in the danger zone now. Policymakers like you are deciding how many will die from heat, disease, extreme weather, pollution, and starvation based on how much heat-trapping methane gas you allow to be burned going forward. You have power to protect residents' quality of life and prosperity. Please use it now. IMT, developers of TO Ranch on the former Kmart site, has committed to energy-efficient LEED Gold construction with water conservation, EV charging, solar panels, and all-electric residential units in a park-like setting with abundant native trees and plants for less heat, cleaner air, and more pollinator habitat. We are living through the climate emergency. Seize the urgency of the moment and demand proven solutions to insulate our community from harm. Act tonight. Tell applicants of 2150 West Hillcrest Drive and 500 East TO Boulevard, all new TO projects must be conditioned on meeting IMT's upgraded standards of health and climate-safe building design. TO Ranch shows building all electric in TO is both ethically and fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. Okay, we have our consent calendar before us. Do any of my colleagues want to pull any items?
I'd like to talk briefly about item M, as in Mary.
M. Mary, okay. Anybody else?
Hearing none, move the balance.
Very good. We have a motion to move the balance. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones?
Aye.
And Mayor Engler?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones on item M.
Yeah, very briefly, I got some comments and thank yous, commendations really for the staff. And I already informed our Public Works Director about it. They really appreciate the way this leak was affects. The pipe was replaced, and they did it all in one day, and they were very appreciative of it. So I'd like to thank Mr. Finley and his staff for very promptly taking care of an emergency up on Queens Way in Lang Ranch. And I'd like to move the item.
Yes, Councilmember McNamee.
In line of what has just been shared, I would also like to say thank you to the resident who was up at 2:30 in the morning, heard water running, immediately called the city and came out to effect a fix on that. Had the resident not taken care about the city, it would have been a bigger fix and more of a mess. So again, I send my thanks to not only the resident, but also the nature and tone of our community, that we take pride in our community and step up and do what's right for the good of the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good comments. Mr. Jones, would you like to move?
Yes, I did, I believe.
And Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones?
Aye.
And Mayor Engler?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0. And Mayor, I do have a title of an ordinance to read into the record. It's an ordinance amending the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code by adding Article 22 and modifying Sections 9-4.202, 9-4.2501, 9-4.2505, and 9-4.2804 to update the city's zoning regulations with objective design standards for residential development, revising building height definition, and revising height requirements for the R3 and RPD zones MCA 2020-70250, and that's ordinance number 1698 NS.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have a department report. Nazar Slim is going to be presenting our report. There's also going to be questions available for Kelvin Parker and Stephen Kearns, I believe. This has to do with residential capacity allocation and a general plan amendment on the Boulevard. Go ahead, Mr. Slim, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and members of the public. The presentation before you tonight is a request for a mixed-use project at 500 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard. Specifically, the request involves an initiation for a general plan amendment and allocation of Measure E units to allow concurrent processing of various entitlements and a pre-screen to evaluate the concept for the Measure E unit allocation. Just some brief background. The initial project and concept was taken in September 20, actually I should back up a little bit. 2017, City Council approved the Economic Development Strategic Plan. The vision focused on city's economic growth over the next 10 years, and 6 opportunity sites were identified in the city. This happens to be one of them. December 15th, 2020, a pre-screen policy was amended, and currently, or I should say the current concept before us was taken in December 9th, 2021. It's a new concept with a new applicant, new application. A little bit about the pre-screen process. It is required for Measure E unit allocation. It evaluates the concept according to the criteria adopted by City Council in December 2020. And it's a conceptual level review through the land use. Design details are going to be addressed formally through entitlement application. The approval of the pre-screen does not mean the project is approved, only that it can go through the normal review and elevation process. Formal applications are to follow within 12 months. If allowed to go forward, the project will be refined. This kind of illustrates where we're at tonight and the general overall process. So we're at the pre-screen. After the pre-screen, the applicant would apply for a pre-application meeting, in which case they'd hear feedback from city staff as well as other departments within community development. At that point, they'd be instructed to apply and actually come in for their entitlement application. In addition, there'd be a concurrent CEQA analysis, environmental analysis. Upon conclusion of those items, we would then go to a Planning Commission hearing, and Planning Commission hearing would then make a recommendation to City Council. Some key considerations to keep in mind. As part of the pre-screening process, we do look at the project setting, the conceptual plan, the regional housing needs assessment, the concept features, and how the project relates to SP 20. So a little bit about the project site. As you can see here, it's sort of situated at a T intersection of Hodenkamp and Thousand Oaks Boulevard. The site is currently vacant. What you see there noted in the circles are some more of the prominent protected oak trees. I believe there's 3 valley oaks and 1 coast live oak. Here's some pictures of the trees I just identified. And here's the oak tree, basically that's more or less at the T intersection of Hodenkamp and Thousand Oaks Boulevard. So now just to discuss some key features and how they relate to SP 20. As you can notice, there is going to be it is a mixed-use project. They do have retail that's right along Thousand Oaks Boulevard that adds to the commercial vibrancy and pedestrian orientation of Thousand Oaks Boulevard. It's also proposing 3, I would say, quasi-public nodes. These are for passive recreation, sitting, perhaps enjoying a meal, if you were to get a meal and kind of have just an impromptu picnic. But there's those 2 on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, as well as 1 located in the sort of southwestern portion of the property, and that's over that kind of right off Lombard. Also, what's notable is that these little plaza nodes, if you will, do preserve the existing trees that I mentioned. They are the focal point of some of these basically little plazas. And just to circle back to the trees, just to note that there are 3 protected valley oaks and 1 coast live oak on site, all going to be incorporated within the proposed landscaping with the concept. And at this time, no removals are being proposed. And this is just a comparison of the previous conceptual site plan. Some highlights, if you will. If you notice, there were a few more mixed-use buildings. The oaks are there also noted. And here is the new concept. So again, the oaks are retained, still situated in relatively, well, they are situated in the same place, and the proposal actually works with the existing oaks. One thing to note is that the concept itself is in line with the preferred land use map that gained approval. Just a couple features about the two, and this is sort of to compare the two. Both concepts do take advantage of a village square concept. They both have residential and commercial components to them. Here's some key differences. The previous did have 6 buildings, as mentioned, 4 mixed uses. And this new one has 5 buildings, so 1 less building and only 1 mixed-use building. Initially, the previous concept did have a total of 300 units. This one has 328, so it's an increase of 28. The first project did get the allocation for 235 Measure E units. This proposal would be a reallocation of those 235 units in addition to 1 more. This is basically a result of kind of reconfiguring the site and also having more residential units. And on that note, they did provide 26 affordable units in the very low category on the initial concept. This revised concept does have 44 affordable units in the low income category, so an increase there. So here's some surrounding land uses. We see commercial basically on either side of the site, as well as to the north, residential to the sort of northeast. There are bus stops, transit stops all along the corridor, Thousand Oaks as well as Hillcrest. And we see one actually located squarely in the sort of almost in the center of the project itself. Lastly, just Thousand Oaks Boulevard as a downtown corridor thriving with commercial and other amenities, commercial uses and other amenities is a very appropriate, again, location for the site. So these are the next steps. If the pre-screen is approved, there would be a pre-application that follows as I discussed earlier, in which case staff would give feedback to the applicant, and there'd be further refinement on the concept. At that point, they may go ahead and do a formal application, in which case it would be a general plan amendment, special use permit, development agreement, lot merger, and a protected tree permit. An environmental review would also be run concurrently. And then we would go to Planning Commission review and recommendation and end up back here in City Council for an action. Tonight, City Council has 2 options. 1, adopt a resolution to initiate the general plan amendment to allocate 236 units to the project, again in concept, and allowing the concurrent processing of legislative actions and entitlements, or deny the allocation of the 236 units for the project proposal. That concludes presentation. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you so much. Council, do we have some questions of staff? Go ahead, Mr. McNamee.
Do we have proposed parking ratios at this point for that location?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Sure.
If I may, Councilman?
If I can repeat the question, what are the proposed parking ratios at this point? Yes,
We
Mr.
don't
Barker.
have those at this stage. At this preliminary stage, this is just to green light the concept. As the applicant works through the process from pre-app to formal application, we'll have a clearer picture of what that parking situation would look like. Typically, projects of this nature, staff strive to get them to comply with our code, but at a minimum, they typically comply with the state code as it relates to mixed-use projects.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. The other one is, what is the height proposed right now with this pre-screen for the buildings?
Currently, there's no height proposed. This is just the general concept. Typically, with mixed-use projects, particularly along the Thousand Oaks corridor and SP 20, they are compliant with City Council's goals and policies, which is 50 feet on average across the project.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Bill De La Pena.
Thank you. Is now the time that we, council members?
I was going, why don't we do it now? I think most of us have had ex parte communications with people involved with this project, and I think we can all announce that now if we'd like. Ms. Bill de la Peña?
He said most. He didn't say everyone. He said most. He didn't say everyone. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So thank you for stating that. The question I have is, it says on the design 3 stories. Is there any indication that it may be more than 3 stories?
Just preliminarily in the concept, we do anticipate there may be a partial 4th floor in some areas of the project. However, what is key is that they comply with the council policy, which is 50 feet on average in terms of height.
Okay, and I know this is just a conceptual design, but I think it is important to ask whether, and maybe this is a question for the applicant, about some of the green initiatives, electric, gray water, and so forth. Is that being contemplated?
That would be an excellent question for the applicant team.
Okay, good. And when you say that at this time there are no removals contemplated, that means that there could be removals, or is that also a question for the applicant?
That would be a good question for the applicant. And I only made that remark in caution because right now it is conceptual, and based on what they're presenting, it doesn't appear that they would be removing any of the protected or ordinance trees. There are other trees on site that may not be ordinance trees, and those may be subject to removal. But again, just because we're at the conceptual level, we don't want to say definitively.
Are there any Toyon's black walnut trees there?
At this point, I don't believe we have identified any of those trees, but we don't have an arborist report. It's just too early to get into that level of detail on the site.
All right, then I'll ask those questions of the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bill de la Peña. Any other questions, Mr. Adam?
Before we move on, if we're going to be announcing ex parte communications, then you need to actually announce.
And actually announce it?
If you're going to
Yes,
do it at this
I
point,
did
then you
have
need to.
discussions with a member of the applicant's team.
If that's the case, then I also had a member of the applicant's team as well.
Mr. Jones?
I also, one person.
Thank you. Mr. Adam?
I did not.
Why
Very
not?
good.
I don't know.
I did as well have an applicant team contact me, but thank you, Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Bob. Why not? Anyway, I had one, if I may.
Very good. Go ahead with your question.
Thanks, Mayor.
Staff.
During our general plan land use discussion some months back, as we went through the map of Thousand Oaks Boulevard, we got to this western end, and I believe, if I recall, we voted unanimously to designate this part of the boulevard as mixed-use low.
That is correct.
So would you say that this project fits that designation?
It does.
It
in
does.
terms of concept.
So it's in line with our expectation, which ultimately we'll vote on when we vote on the final general plan, but it's in line with our expectation as of now.
That is correct.
All right, good, thank you.
Very good. I have just one quick question. It always comes up with Measure E units, but this is it's going to be more units on its actual property than Measure E because of the density bonus. Can you go over the density bonus for people who maybe this is new to them so that we can clarify that?
So it's a state regulation, and I'm just going to kind of keep it simple, and we'll make it germane to this particular proposal. So the density bonus number is based on the allocated Measure E units. In this case, the base density is going to be 183 units. So you would apply density bonus to those 183 units. Now, the amount of density bonus you get, and it's in percentages. In this case, they're asking for 50%, and how they achieve that 50% is you apply for a certain percentage of affordable units in a certain category. And so it's not to get to the other categories, but in this case, they're doing 44 affordable units, which meets the minimum of 24% of the base, in this case, the 44 affordable units they're proposing are 24% of 183 base units. Based on that, state law allows them a 50% bonus on top of the 183. So you basically take your 0.5, multiply that by 183, and you get 92. 92 gets added to the 183, and that's the resulting, I think, is like 200, and now I lost my math in my head, but basically 240 some odd units. And then from there, they have the additional unlimited units, which don't count for any of that, and that's the ones that are over the commercial property.
Thank you. Appreciate the explanation. Any other questions from my colleagues? Very good. Well, let's hear from our applicant. I believe applicants, we have Diane McKay and Kevin McCloskey. Very good. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Engler, council members, and city staff. Tom Cohen's in Bora Bora, so I'm Tom Cohen tonight. So thanks for having me, and I'll stumble through this. Thank you for staff. Thank you for your report this evening and helping us consider the many possibilities that the property presents. Henry Nazarbekian and his family have owned this property for more than 30 years, and they opted to bring this pre-screen before you before going out to buyers so that the family may fully understand what can be accomplished on their land. The family participated in the planning for the TO Boulevard specific plan, understanding that their property is a critical component to the success of the plan. We are requesting your approval of 236 units of Measure E residential capacity through an initiation of a general plan amendment, and allow a future developer and their team of architects, engineers, and planners to proceed and develop a plan working closely with city leadership and staff to bring you a high-quality mixed-use village. We recognize there's much work to do ahead, but I'd like to highlight a few of the major points. The pre-screen projects are evaluated according to the proposed land use. We are asking council to consider a mixed-use project including apartments, townhomes, and commercial and retail uses. A very early conceptual site plan is part of the staff report. There are some similarities to the plan presented at the prior pre-screen that council approved, but there are also some changes reflecting that the applicant, the Nazarbekians, listened to the community and city council's input, including an increase in the number of affordable units, a reduction in building height, and an increase in parking for the future residents and commercial businesses. If council grants provisional approval tonight to move forward, this project will go into the entitlement process. Then the Nazarbekians' plan is to undergo a selection process from buyers who submit bids to purchase the property, not unlike the pre-screen almost exactly a year ago for 2150 West Hillcrest. Once the selected buyer/developer will bring their team on, and they will create a detailed site plan, building elevations, floor plans, artist renderings, grading plans, landscape concepts, etc. As we all know, this is not a final action tonight, but rather an initial assessment of whether the concept should proceed through the city's usual review process. We firmly believe the concept meets the council's adopted pre-screen criteria. As such, we submitted a written summary that details the concept site plan satisfies those criteria while protecting 3 beautiful heritage oak trees by incorporating them as features of the project. And stating the obvious, this project is a prominent location on the west end of Thousand Oaks Boulevard, one of 6 economic opportunity sites identified. Whoever buys and develops this property will be required to bring the city the highest quality project with a wide range of amenities and retail for both the future project residents as well as the nearby residents and businesses. I took a tour, as many of you know, of 299 a couple of weeks ago, and it was beautiful. And the one thing I noticed is you can see the Nazarbekian property from 299 and vice versa. The residents will easily be able to walk between the two, creating that true village as part of this city, much as it's been envisioned for many years. The Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan number 20 calls for housing on this property, which uniquely represents the best opportunity on the boulevard as a West End anchor to create quality housing that's close to jobs, services, and retail. It's a 6+ acre site within walking distance of the Jan's Marketplace, Tarantula Hill Brewing Company, retail establishments being created at 299, The soon-to-be renovated restaurant looks like Corrigan Steakhouse, the Oaks Mall, and businesses along Lombard, Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and Moore Park Road. And as you know, the City Council, as part of the GPAC process last year, identified this property for housing to help meet the state's housing requirements. This project will provide 24% of the units to low-income households, expected to be 44 affordable units, in exchange for a state density bonus of 50%. For the Mill Creek pre-screen, the council approved 26 affordable units in a 300-unit project. The Nazarbekians are proposing 44 units in a 329-unit project, 18 more affordable units than previously offered. We view this as a substantial positive change to the project. We cannot overstate that this project will have a catalytic impact on the area while also addressing sustainability principles that will encourage walking instead of driving and reducing vehicle miles traveled. Community engagement will be encouraged with the public gathering places and naturally support the businesses along Thousand Oaks Boulevard. It will also provide places for people to live. We continue to hear from the life sciences and biotech community that they desire a place for their contemporary options for their next generations of workers. With that, the Nazarbekian family commits to full transparency and a comprehensive public outreach program. They will work closely with staff to ensure a development that everyone can take pride in. They will work closely with everyone, and thus we are presenting this before you for the pre-screen process. Lastly, Keith is actually going to go over some of the details of the project, and then we will both be here to answer any questions you might have. And I'm going to thank my husband later for printing on both sides of this paper, so I missed some of what I was going to have to say, but that gives Keith more time.
And very good, Mr. McCloskey. Sorry I called you Kevin before. It's Keith, and welcome to the council.
Thank you. Keith McCloskey with KTGY Architects, and here to represent the Nazarbekian family and their proposed development. So, as you know, the other project that was presented by Mill Creek a little over a year ago, those units had expired, and really what the Nazarbekian family wants to do is get the units allocated to the site so that they can work with future developers that they're going to be looking to partner with to move this project forward after the transaction of the property. And so the main thing that we wanted to do in looking to bring this project forward again was look at ways that we could see where the project left off and how can we improve on it. And so the project is previously approved at the previous pre-screen when the units were allocated. Had 6 buildings. The newer one has 5. And the main difference between the way the project is presented is really a little bit less commercial and more residential and more affordable residential. And so the project will have a total of 28 more units than was approved, but it will also have, I believe it's 18 additional affordable units. So the majority of the additional units that are being presented are low-income units. And so the density bonus that Mr. Slim spoke about earlier is being utilized in order to achieve the total density of 328. So that's with the base units, the density bonus, and then the unlimited units over commercial. And so there's a couple areas, there's basically 4 areas that have non-residential uses. And the first being commercial or ground floor retail along T.O. Boulevard. And so there'll be approximately 5,300 square feet of retail space along T.O. Boulevard. And with a significant step back in urban plaza space, not too different than the 299 project, where the corner of Thousand Oaks Boulevard and the entry into the project will be established with kind of a broad urban plaza, widening the sidewalk, allowing for opportunities of outdoor dining and pedestrian circulation. I think some of the spirit of the original design is being maintained here, the idea of multiple buildings broken up to allow for kind of enhanced circulation on site for pedestrians as well as vehicular circulation. And all of the oak trees, as Mr. Slim had presented, are being preserved, not only preserved, but really featured as part of the focal elements of the project. And so the oak trees along T.O. Boulevard are being preserved as focal elements with small park-like settings maintained around them, and then the residential mixed-use buildings will move kind of in between those to create essentially the street facade along Teo Boulevard. And so on the northwest corner of Teo Boulevard, that's really been broken up into smaller buildings to keep the scale manageable. They're all 3-story. And the first set of 4 units on the north building, as well as the building facing the main entry drive, are live-work units. So 8 live-work units over there, another 4 live-work units on Building 1, which is the eastern building. And then we've got residential above those. And so those kind of establish the ground floor plane, really where we've got live-work units that creates a commercial-like atmosphere, a lot of transparency, interaction with the pedestrian realm. And the other buildings are essentially terraced into the hillside, so the parking would be completely concealed, subterranean. It is above grade as you're closer to Teo, but it's completely lined with retail, lobby, live-work units around that perimeter. So there's no parking visible other than the immediate kind of convenience parking that's along the entry drive. But really, the project is very similar to the one previously approved. We're just customizing this for the Nazarbikian family. The current state of the market, the demand for commercial has adjusted slightly, and the demand for affordable housing has increased what we're providing there. But we're here to answer any questions, whether it's about sustainability, the project design, or anything else that's come up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Do we have any questions from my council colleagues? Madam Bilde-Peña.
Thank you very much, Mayor Engler. So the question is the same question that I asked earlier. I do see 3 stories on the design plan, and here that perhaps there might be tucked away partial fourth story. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the intent is that the buildings on the northwest corner would be limited to 3-story, because we've got essentially a more or less flat plane there that we're working with. We would come up off of Teo Boulevard, raising the elevation slightly due to the floodplain there, and elevate that pad level, but those would generally sit up a couple feet above Teo Boulevard and then would be 3-story above that. The other larger podium buildings are in a pretty wildly varying topography, which has some grade change. And so while we'd like to be all 3-story, the topography basically creates a stepping building. And so what we've tried to do with the building massing is create a project that would consistently appear to be 3-story, but is moving up the slope. And then some of those portions that may have to create the density in the middle of the project would be contained within those areas, so that from the freeway, the edges that come up to the edge of the freeway would be 3 stories, and the edge on Teo Boulevard would be 3 stories, but as it steps, you get these spaces where they might be taller, but they would never exceed 50 feet from grade at any given point.
And regarding environmental construction standards, are you considering all electric, gray water, or anything like that?
Yeah, at this point, because it is the Nazarbikians' proposal to get units allocated and then work with a developer to acquire the site, similar to the Amgen project, where we worked with Amgen to get the project through pre-screen, and then we worked with the new applicant, who's Latigo, to refine that project. That would be very similar here. So with all of our clients, we always try and promote kind of cutting-edge sustainability, and that would be kind of a driving factor in the design. Certain developers may gravitate to certain features, but in terms of meeting and exceeding Title 24, that would certainly be the case with any developer.
I mean, you heard tonight, and you also probably saw the letter. I mean, there is really an urgent need to be much more environmentally conscious when we build new buildings. So I wanted to mention that. And then my last question is, why only apartments? Why not for sale condos?
Yeah, at this point, because we don't know who the ultimate developer builder is going to be for the project, they may be interested in doing some for sale, some for rent, all one, all the other. But I'd say that the majority of developers that are actively looking at large mixed-use sites like this tend to be more focused on rental product, but it's not to say that some of these units couldn't be for sale. I think giving the Nazarbikian family the flexibility to have the rental units ultimately, I think, gives as long as there's a unit count set there that they can work with, certain developers may have a preference for sale or for rent. But similar to the IMT project where we have multiple building types, some 3-story townhomes, some podium, it's all for rent, but it creates the dynamic of, mixed building scales, mixed residential unit typologies, even within the all for rent format. So ultimately, it'll just be up to the developer that ultimately purchases the property, what type of mix of for sale and for rent that they would like to do.
And this would be a development agreement? This would be a development agreement. We had recently had a development agreement that didn't quite go the way that I thought it would go, and there's always that risk. So I just wanted to be clear that that all of the information tonight is being taken into consideration, and that we will not have any negative surprises like we did with our last development agreement.
Yeah, I would hope that would be the case as well.
Yeah, I think they hear you. The Nazarbekians hear you, and that's what they'll be looking for.
Yeah, because that was, in my opinion, and I'm speaking only for myself, really unfortunate. And so if we have an opportunity here to really deliver a public benefit, certainly we should take advantage of that. And if we can include for sale condos, that should definitely be considered.
Thank you, Ms. Hilda de Pena. Any other questions of the applicant? Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I realize this is tentative, and I wonder, do you have an idea of how many, is there an established ratio of cars to dwelling units in a development of this type?
No, that'll get worked out as we refine the building plans and footprints and structural grid. What I will say is that it will exceed the minimum requirements that are set forth by the state.
What will exceed, the cars or the parking places?
The number of parking spaces, yeah.
Parking place. And do you have an idea of what the maximum height, is it 50 feet, or could that vary if you put on a 4th story?
Yeah, we would be well under the 50-foot average height requirement. That's part of SB 20.
Well, if it's average, then some might be higher than that.
Yeah, so the way that the height calculation works is basically works off of adjacent grade. And so as the building steps up through the different portions of the site, the north side adjacent to TO, the south side adjacent to the freeway, as the grade steps, so does the building. And so if you're talking maximum height from a low point, yeah, you might be over 50 feet, but at any given point along the adjacent grade of the building, we'd be well under that average.
If calculations did not exactly pan out as far as parking goes, would you be susceptible to not allowing parking on Lombard? I know there are office buildings there and medical buildings there that have people that come for treatment and so forth. I'm wondering if the parking might spill over onto Lombard if they had visitors. And I mean, I know you make the best estimates you can, but quite often in apartment complexes, I have seen a lot of cars parked on the streets in the neighborhood. Would there be any, I mean, this might be a hypothetical that would not materialize, but would there be some room to have an agreement about Lombard Street?
I think the applicant team would be open to look into that. As it stands in terms of how it's being proposed, we're not currently relying on any of the Lombard spaces as part of the required parking. We don't anticipate using that. So really whether or not it becomes restricted for residents specifically, I guess would be something that we could discuss.
Yeah, and if I might add to that, Lombard being a public street, wouldn't be able to restrict per se, but there's certainly a number of mechanisms that the Public Works Department has and Police Department has in terms of managing traffic. So time frames, maybe even metering, all varying opportunities that could be explored with change in condition when you add a housing element.
And Mr. Jones, if I can, I'm trying to stay with our newfound 3-question rule.
Oh, is there a 3-question rule?
That's our tradition here for the last year. So if you don't mind, I'll go to Councilmember McNamee and then come back to you if you have other questions.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I've approached several of the building developers who are coming into Thousand Oaks to build units of mixed use as well as just apartments. One of the amenities they're adding is a business department or a business area for people to construct or to have people to conduct their business actually at the apartment. As people are not going in the offices anymore, they can have a business center in the facility. I made a request and got actually 100% response rate from the developers of making that as a combined tutoring center for our up-and-coming teachers at Moore Park, Cal Lutheran, Cal State Channel Island, to come into these business centers and do tutoring for the children not only in that facility, but also in the neighborhood area to help them with after-school instruction. Would the applicant be open to that idea? This is not a make or break for me, but I'm a big advocate of education and wanted to see if the applicant would be interested in doing something like that with the business center and a tutoring center combined.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of the same in terms of space being set aside for business center use or co-working, as many folks call it, kind of a non-proprietary version of WeWork. And this project would likely very much need to include something like that to compete with other apartment projects that are being built, in Thousand Oaks and in the immediate region as well. So I think the space would be there. And I think, as you mentioned, most developers that see the benefit of engaging with the community, I think would be open to that idea.
So they would be open to the idea of also a tutoring center there combined with the business center? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, I mean, because it's going to be a future developer that hasn't been identified yet, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I think the idea of bringing that design concept to them and encouraging them to consider it, I think we'd be happy to engage in that conversation with them.
My philosophy on this, the more I keep asking for this, eventually it will start arriving. So that's it's all about fishing. Thank you much. Mayor?
I care a little bit about education, so I'm with you there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Jones, do you have another round of questions?
No, I have no more questions.
Very good. Go ahead, Ms. Bilda La Peña.
Thank you. I only have one question, actually. It is my understanding that the maximum height is 50 feet. So we shouldn't really see anything taller than 50 feet there.
Yeah, and then in terms of the way that we measure from the adjacent grade, that, yeah, we wouldn't imagine anything to need any kind of height incentive to exceed that we could work within that maximum.
Okay.
I just have one question, and actually a comment off the top. Thank you for bringing this project to us. It's nice to have something to look at on that property. I think you heard some of the public speakers earlier talking about the value of addressing environmental concerns across the board. Is this something that I think will be able to be accomplished in this type of configuration? Is that something that you will really make a priority for this project?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of sustainability certification systems out there. So which one they might choose to engage with, or whether they just look at the state Title 24 requirements. What we typically do is identify the opportunities, and many of which come inherently from the site itself. Is it near other non-residential uses? Does it encourage biking, walking? Does it have services on site, such as the retail that this project has, to encourage that? So programs like Fitwell that are kind of above and beyond either Title 24 or LEED really put a strong emphasis on things like walkability, outdoor play, biking, bike storage, that type of thing. And so what we would try and do is just bring a kind of all-inclusive look at all different ways to be sustainable. LEED kind of focuses on energy consumption as well as sustainable site solutions. And so it's really a hybrid of looking at all the kind of 360 degree of sustainability. But I think the site, in terms of just the location itself, and then the fact that it's a mixed-use project, sets itself up early for success in that type of project.
And I noticed that you're going to have some live-work units there. Remind me how many, I think you said 12 perhaps?
There's 12 live-work units.
12 live, which will take a bite out of the biggest greenhouse gas production, which is travel. So,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you. And we do have some public speakers, unless I have some other comments from my colleagues, and I don't see any. So let's go to our public speakers. Our first public speaker is online. It's Clint Foltz.
Hello, my name is Clint Foltz. I live in Thousand Oaks and I'm a member of the Kaneho Climate Coalition. Last month, part 2 of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's 6th assessment report was released and paid little attention to by the press. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres had this to say about the report. It is essential to meet the goal of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. Science tells us that it will require the world to cut emissions by 45% by 2030 and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Delay is death. Last week, an ice shelf the size of New York City collapsed in East Antarctica, an area long thought to be stable and not hit much by climate change. The collapse marked the first time in human history that the frigid region had an ice shelf collapse. We are in a climate emergency. And at the very same time, we are in a housing emergency. The US has an underbuilding gap of 7 million housing units across the country. Meanwhile, there are close to 200,000 persons experiencing homelessness here in California alone. These conditions will only be made worse by climate change. The project at 500 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard could help alleviate some of this burden. This location is perfect to help create a more walkable and bikeable Thousand Oaks. This is a great opportunity to build climate-friendly infrastructure, and building all electric now would save property owners and renters money down the line. We must reduce greenhouse gas emissions now for the health of our community and the health of our planet. This project is an opportunity to create all-electric, future-proofed homes that will make our community better for everyone. Please adopt this resolution while considering our climate and housing emergencies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Foltz. Our next speaker, Jackson Piper. Mr. Piper.
Good evening, and thank you very much, members of the City Council, members of the public attending. I'm Jackson Piper. I live in unincorporated Newbury Park. I really like this project, or this proposal. I like that it's 3 stories with mixed use and that it sort of terraces towards the freeway, so it maintains a fairly low profile. I really like that it takes advantage of the state density bonus law because it produces more units overall, and also because that guarantees that there will be 44 units of lower income level housing available within the city that wouldn't be there otherwise. I really like that it's 55 units per acre. Yes, this is denser than other projects in Thousand Oaks, but not very dense overall. It's still at the human scale, and if more projects can take advantage of this this scale within the 3 to 4 story framework and provide this many units and provide affordable units, this is a great thing for the city and for Southern California in general. I love that they're preserving the old growth valley oak trees. I would hope that they are able to incorporate climate-friendly elements into the building of the project when it comes to that. I do recognize that costs may increase if that is the case, and so I think it is wise for the city in this and future projects to come up with either an additional density bonus, increase in height allowed, or some other incentives to offset any cost of developing with all electric instead of gas, and with other potential climate adaptations in the project as well. If the costs increase too much, then we end up with no project with no affordable housing and no climate measures within it, instead of the project that we should want, which includes all of those. I think that this project isn't perfect, but it sets a very good standard that should be followed throughout the commercial areas and the malls in Thousand Oaks that could help really add a lot of housing that is needed in the city. So please approve this unit allocation, and going forward in talks with the developer, see if you can find additional ways to encourage climate-friendly construction, and if possible, to add additional affordable units to the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piper. Next up is Faith Grant. Ms. Grant.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Faith Grant, living in Thousand Oaks, and I'm an engaged community resident with Kaneho Climate Coalition. As we approach Earth Day in April, scientists from around the world have again stated in the last IPCC report that our planet is in a code red condition as greenhouse gases continue to drive global warming. These reports leave people feeling helpless and thinking there is nothing they can do. Actually, Thousand Oaks residents can do a lot by exerting control today over the second largest greenhouse gas producer, and that is our residential and commercial buildings. Residents can ask our City Council to set green building standards and insist that they be incorporated in new developments now. Tonight, projects at 2150 West Hill Crest and 500 East Thousand Oaks are on the agenda. We want to ensure that green building standards are part of this approval process, starting from the beginning. Equally important is that the City Council and building departments understand that it's not a choice between development or the environment. Both can be achieved by insisting upon green building standards of electrifying solar panels, EV charging stations, and more in these new developments that will result in lowering greenhouse gas emissions over the next 40 years. There are some with the perspective that these green building options, like electrification, take away a buyer's choice. Our children and grandchildren want to have a choice also, and that is to live in a world without drought, wildfires, food and water insecurity, and animal and plant extinction. Isn't that the essential choice? And finally, another way that residents can take action is to attend the Thousand Oaks Arbor Earth Day event on April 9th at the Thousand Oaks Community Center. Learn about alternative vehicles and educational climate workshops. And please come by the Kaneho Climate Coalition booth and meet our volunteers and learn more about being a community activist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And in person, we have Danielle Borgia. Danielle, please come down, followed by Sean Meridian.
Good evening, Mayor Engler and council members. My name is Danielle Borgia. I'm a Thousand Oaks resident and president and CEO of the Greater Kaneho Valley Chamber of Commerce. We represent over 800 businesses in the Kaneho Valley. On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to express our support for this allocation of housing units to the Nazarbekian family for this mixed-use project concept that aligns with both the goals of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan and the preferred land use map. This site was pre-approved last year, and the new application addresses one of the issues of concern for the council at the time, the number of affordable units. The newly proposed project has 44 affordable units. A project of this nature will provide much-needed workforce housing for our young professionals and young families while allowing our employers to both retain and recruit the talent that we really need to make our business community thrive. I was speaking with one of our local biotech companies last week, and many of their young employees are living in neighboring cities because of the lack of available housing options in the city of Thousand Oaks. The central location of this property will place more residents on the boulevard, walkability to local businesses, providing community benefits, including undergrounding existing overhead power lines and preserving our beautiful oak trees. On behalf of our board of directors and our members, I urge you to approve this longtime Thousand Oaks family with the requested unit allocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Next up, Sean Meridian. Mr. Meridian.
Good evening, Mayor Engler, honorable city council members. My name is Sean Meridian. I'm a lifelong resident of Thousand Oaks and the proud president of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Association. And I must say, Feels great to be here tonight. 2 years, we haven't had in-person meetings, and to come here and see city staff, and it feels wonderful, and I'm grateful that to be here before you. We submitted a letter this evening on behalf of our board of directors and our members, strongly supporting the applicant's request for not a project, but the opportunity to bring forward a project and to deliver on our council goals and priorities, on our commitment to the community on the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan that has contemplated some type of activation of the site for well over 10 years. We have all witnessed time and time again the difficulties of bringing a project forward. We've witnessed that the mere allocation of units does not guarantee that those units, unfortunately, will be built. And we've seen that housing has reached a critical point in our community where it's undeniable, not only by our media, but by our employers, by our learning institutions. And we've heard that this council wants to take meaningful steps towards addressing that concern. We've heard this year council members say property should be used to its highest and best use because it's scarce. We've heard council members say we're not able to support projects because they don't have affordable units. So we believe that the application and the request before you not only addresses housing, it has affordable units, it's compatible with the general plan preferred land use map, it's compatible with the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan. It's desperately needed by our members, by our small businesses, by friends and family members of mine that have moved out of this community because there is zero place for them to live. So I ask you, I urge you, I beg you, when you look at this vote tonight, and I see one council member laughing at my comments, but when you look at this vote tonight, please consider and give this applicant an opportunity to bring a project forward. You're not voting for the merits of the project, but just the opportunity for them to bring something forward that we desperately need. Please support the allocation and staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maradian. We have one more person online, Rosanna Gara. Rosanna?
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
My name is Rosanna Gara, and I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. While some strides have been made in the awareness of affordable housing in Thousand Oaks, I call on City Council to approve this particular project. I've come before you several times to highlight my concerns of how lack of affordable housing affects older adults in our community. Thousand Oaks needs to create incentives to increase the percentage of affordable housing units on all our new development in the city. So while there is some affordable housing proposed here, it would be wonderful if we would take a look at this particular project and see if more could be afforded for our older adults. Older adults continue to be the fastest growing demographic for homelessness in the county. For the affordable housing that is available, thousands remain on the wait list. Rents are rising in our community, which means that it creates displacement of older adults who live on a fixed income. Many seniors find themselves needing to share small apartments just to make ends meet. Older adults volunteer in our community, pay taxes, raise children and grandchildren, coach teams, and I believe deserve the security of a stable home and a roof over their head. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gara. We do have no other public speakers, so what I'd like to do is have staff answer any questions that may have come up during the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The comments that were raised this evening fall into two primary categories. One is energy efficiency, which the applicant team addressed, but this is something that staff will evaluate if the project is greenlit to move forward. The other related to generally greenhouse gases, which will be evaluated if the project moves forward to the environmental review phase.
Just want to add that it's also important to remember that any of the building form and the features that we discussed tonight don't preclude the developer or, moving forward, does not preclude them from actually having efficient building infrastructure, such as photovoltaics or electrical appliances, so.
Very good. And the applicant, you have some time if you'd like to make some final statements or rebut any of the comments of the council or people online.
I'll take just a moment of your time. I'm personally really excited about this, to see this site hopefully move forward in this process. When I went to visit 299, like I said, to actually see and envision what it might be like to have these two live work opportunities as well as commercial and retail mixed use, to be able to walk, you literally, it's a block and a half, maybe at most, to be able to walk between them. And so I think the village that we're looking for can start at the west end of the boulevard. That it has everything here that council wants, and it's not asking for any variances over the things that council has asked for. And so I would please request your vote. Thank you. The Nazarbekian family has been here for 30 years, and they would like to see this move forward, and I think they will be completely transparent with those that are looking to buy this, what the city is looking for. Thank you.
Any final questions from my colleagues? Ms. McKay, I do have one question. Sorry, I timed that perfectly just as you sat down.
Mayor Engler.
Thank you. In the proposal, we have 44 affordable units at the low-income level. The prior one had whatever it was, 26 units at a very low level. Is there a reason why there's been a dichotomy there of low versus very low, or can as we move forward, can there be a combination of that?
I think that's all, up for negotiation. I mean, the Nazarbekian family looked at a way to have more affordable, because that's what they heard, is that more affordable is needed. But as we've said, there is going to be, somebody who buys and develops this land, and I would highly urge them to watch this meeting tonight to see what you all are going to be looking for, because that's when that's when this process really starts with the pre-app and moving it forward. This is simply going to allocate the units, and so we really can bring something forward that our city will be proud of, and the family that's held this property for 30 years will be proud of.
Well, thank you for bringing so many lower income units forward. That's a very, very good addition to this project. So, Ms. Bill de la Peña.
I'm glad that you mentioned this, low income versus very low income. Again, every time I speak about affordable housing, we have to remember that low income in Ventura County is a family of 4 making $90,000 a year. That is considered low income, whether you believe it or not, but that is really a fact. So I know there is a negative connotation. People think the worst, but think about it. Who makes $90,000 a year? Is that your firefighter, your teacher? Is it your store manager, office manager? Probably even don't make that much. So just remember that affordable housing would be housing that workforce families could afford. And if we have an opportunity to provide a few very low-income housing units as well, I think that would be fantastic. So obviously we've had different experiences with approving pre-screens, some of which were good and others not so good and others failed. But certainly want to make very clear that this is not the last word on this development. There will be other opportunities to reach out to the community and then for the Planning Commission and the Council to make that decision.
Absolutely. I kept waiting for the staff to put up the chart that has the yellow that moves over to the green. We're way over here in the yellow still.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
The for sale should also be considered. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think we're set. Thank you. You may sit back down this time.
Mayor, may I make a comment, please?
I think, yes, we can close our discussion with the public, but yes, please go ahead and
okay.
Make your comments.
Well, the business of about affordable housing, if you look at our RENA numbers, and I think I have this right, in actuality, our biggest deficit is not very low, it's not moderate, it's not above moderate, it is in fact low income. We're about only 3% of what we should have. So this definitely fits that. And, well, all right, since I'm speaking, I guess I'll talk a little bit about what's in front of us tonight. You know, there's a lot riding for this city on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, a lot. I mean, it's on the 101 corridor. It's really the only place left to develop housing. You know, our open space is our open space. Our single-family neighborhoods are the way they are. And polls have said over and over again, this is where people want to see housing. You know, I visited a company out in that biotech hub that we're developing, or that's being developed. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested in there. Thousands of jobs are being created. I visited Capsida. The average starting age is 25 years old. And these young people, after a couple of years, are making six figures. And the one thing they are missing that they need is housing here in the city of Thousand Oaks. We voted unanimously on a campus master plan. We're going to make a significant investment on the Civic Arts Plaza to turn it into a premier gathering spot. We need people for that to happen, though. We need people living on the boulevard for that to happen. And right now, and I know 299 is pending, and this may be pending as well, but we don't have that many people living on the boulevard. It's a very small amount for a 3-mile stretch. So, you know, I really believe this is going to activate and energize the western end of the boulevard. Look what Tarantula Hill's done. You know, you, on a Friday or Saturday night, you start in the Automall and you drive down T.O. Boulevard, and it's kind of dark, kind of quiet, and then all of a sudden you get to T.H., and boom, all these people. It's exciting. You know, it's so nice to see. And with 299 and this potential project, I think that's just going to add to the activation of the western end of the boulevard. We get the low-income housing, jumps from 26 to 44. And right now, I mean, you know, we have like a virtually zero vacancy rate in the city. So we really need housing. And as far as the environmental end, I mean, it's been said over and over, we get to preserve the 3 big trees there. 60% of greenhouse gases are from vehicle miles traveled. So hopefully people will start to walk and not get in their cars on the boulevard. I know the climate action people would like that. So, you know, I think that this is definitely the way we want to go. And I would move that we approve 10A.
Thank you, Councilmember Adam. Councilmember McNamee.
This project has a lot of nice features to it, one of which is grounding of the power lines that currently go across the property, and having those put under is a really nice benefit. There's a need for housing, as my council member Adam has suggested. The biotech hub coming in, a lot of those employees are looking for places to live, but we also have 100 residents coming into our hospitals, and we'd like to have places for them to stay and make Thousand Oaks their home. This would be a potential place where they could stay and live and make Thousand Oaks their future. We also have teachers that I'd like to have become part of our community, and this project may accommodate all those future teachers that we want to bring in and make part of Thousand Oaks. They're our future. I like the idea that they're open to the idea of a business center with a combined tutoring center, so we can nurture our future teachers who will be tutors there to help students in our community increase their study skills and improve their grades. Education is always an invitation to be more, and if we can combine a private-public kind of environment where the tutors earn some money, students benefit from getting access to quality tutors, keeps them off the streets, learn a skill, I think it's a win-win-win for our community. The downside, though, is the parking. And again, it's not defined yet, but I'm looking for what that number will wind up being when it comes back to council, because I share Councilmember Jones' concern regarding parking not being adequate, and they're parking on Lombard or Thousand Oaks Boulevard or Hodenkamp. And God forbid someone's walking in at 2 o'clock in the morning because they can't find parking in their parking lot, and crime begins to rise because they're definite victims for muggings, rapes, things of that nature. Or the businesses that are on Lombard can't find parking for their own clientele that they've enjoyed so much because there's not adequate parking on the facility. And the biggest thing that I've got against this program is I'm going to miss the pumpkin patch and the Christmas trees every year. And I thank the Nazarbekian family for making it available for all these years. It's such a joy to drive by and see that as an activity. I can count on it twice a year. Mayor?
I didn't realize you were such a patron of pumpkin patches.
Yes, I am, Charlie Brown.
Mr. Jones.
Well, you know, the red light, green light hearing is to give the applicant an indication of how you're going to vote at the final analysis. And from my point of view, this particular application is a little bit too tentative. I don't know what's exactly going to happen when we get the final plan. I appreciate the open and sincere effort that the owner is making to meet what he perceives to be the desires of the council. And in many ways, I share some of those desires. I had a problem with parking and traffic when it was fewer units, and now they've increased the number of units. I am concerned. I don't know if we need a public parking lot, Mr. City Manager, in that area. Last time I went to Tarantula Hill, I had to walk about a block to get back to my car. So I'm just wondering what the traffic and, you know, we have these traffic studies, and traffic studies that I've seen over many years seem to be able to prove what they want to prove. A lot of people think that traffic on Thousand Oaks Boulevard is dangerous now. I know people that purposely avoid it and try to drive on Hillcrest if they can. So this is simply going to add to that. So it has more units. I'm concerned, as I say, about cars, traffic, parking. I appreciate the effort of the developer to come with something, but I don't feel I know enough about the height of the building in this terms of what the view will be if we are cutting off the view from Thousand Oaks Boulevard to the beautiful hills, trees, open space we have. I'm concerned that it's all going to be rental. My wife was reading to me an article where big companies now are buying up brand new houses and taking them all off the market so that if somebody had the vague chance of buying, even at the terribly high prices today, that when they take these off the market, then they're only for rent, and then they have the ability to charge whatever they want. And young couples don't get a stake in a property. They'll be renters all their lives. I mean, maybe that's the wave of the future. I don't know. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry they can't get a stake and then go on from that, as I think all of us up here probably did at one time. So my bottom line is that this is just too tentative from my point of view. And I'm not really ready to give the green light to this. And maybe all the red light, green light hearings are of this nature that we don't know enough. But I'm concerned, as I say, about traffic, parking, the number of units that are increased even more than when I was not in favor of it before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Bill De La Pena.
Thank you, Mayor Engler. I do have a question for staff real quick. What is the height of the Lupus project at Herbs? Is it 48 feet?
The front building is 42 feet and the back building is 44 feet.
Okay. So that gives us an indication as to how high this might be, which is why I mentioned the height already. 50 feet is really, really high, and certainly having that right in the front would not be so attractive. However, parking obviously is a concern, height is a concern, and as I said, just because this might go through doesn't mean that it will be necessarily voted on in the very end. The last pre-screening, I green-lighted I was very, very excited about it, only to be utterly disappointed in the end, and I voted against it. So certainly, I don't want to make that 2 such cases within a year or so. But I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you, Mayor Engler.
Thank you, Ms. Bill de la Pena. From my perspective, again, this is a first step of a project. This is our pre-screen, so I'm not too concerned with the lack of specificity of the proposal yet. Basically, what the applicant is asking us is to change the zoning and allow mixed use in that area that allows some residential. And I think that is a great use for the property. I'll refer back to my colleague, Mr. Adam. This will bring some people down to that area of the Boulevard. I have occasionally driven by Tarantula Hill and have noticed that same thing, the energy that comes from having the people out there enjoying themselves. This will bring more people to that location. The only difference is they won't have to drive to that area. They won't have to get in their car, use up some gas, and put out some more greenhouse gas emissions just to get to Tarantula Hill. They'll be there already. That to me is a big positive to the project. As presented, there's some promises by the applicant that the trees will be left intact, that they not only be left intact, that they will be enhanced. Basically, what I envision there is 3 little parkettes of access that allows people to really enjoy those trees. Right now, they're behind a chain link fence. That's an important part of what we're trying to do here is give that access to people to be able to have that experience with those trees. There's a lot of other things. I understand Lombard now will be able to access that control intersection for egress off Lombard. The live-work units there is highly attractive to me. Being able to have people live there, work there, enjoy the restaurants that are there, go down across the street, all that is very attractive. So I think just from that perspective and the limited thing that we are doing tonight, which is telling the applicant that, yes, we think that as much as my colleague likes the pumpkin patch, that is a better use for the property to put some residential there. So with that, I would call for a vote on our from Al Adams' motion.
Councilmember Bill de la Pena?
Yes.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones?
No.
And Mayor Engler?
Yes.
And that motion carries 4-1 with Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Jones voting no.
Very good. Let's go on to our next department report. This is a department report on the general plan and housing element annual progress report. We, as a council, asked that we be given this report so that we keep better tabs on what's going on in our housing area. So with that, I'll have Kristen Rice come down, and she's one of our senior planners. Also available will be Kelvin Parker again and Kari Finley. Go ahead, Ms. Rice, when you're ready. We are setting up our PowerPoints and things for our presentation. And as soon as we are ready, we will broadcast it. Would you like us to take a 5-minute break while you set things up?
Just need about 60 seconds.
Very good. We can handle that.
Okay. This is. Can I go? Okay, I'm ready. Thank you.
Very good. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The presentation that I have for you tonight is to summarize the General Plan and Housing Element Annual Progress Report for the 2021 calendar year. For some background to tonight's presentation, the California Government Code requires all jurisdictions to file the General Plan and Housing Element Annual Progress Report. The Housing Successor Agency Annual Report, it requires jurisdictions to file both the General Plan Annual Progress Report and the Housing Element Annual Progress Report, and also the Housing Successor Agency Annual Report to the State Office of Planning and Research and also the Housing and Community Development Department prior to April 1st of each year. These reports are for the 2021 calendar year only and must be submitted to each jurisdiction's lead decision-making body in a public setting prior to submitting to the state. In 2021, there were no formal amendments to the general plan in terms of the various chapters or the topic areas, including land use, circulation, safety, conservation, open space, noise, etc. It is noted, however, though, that the City Council did endorse a new land use map last May as part of the process to comprehensively update the general plan. This map will be in effect when the new general plan is adopted. However, because it's not formally adopted yet, it's not considered an amendment for the purpose of reporting to the state. In terms of compliance with the State Office of Planning and Research, in 2017, OPR released a comprehensive update to the statewide general plan guidelines to address growing issues in safety and the new requirements to address environmental justice. These new issues will be addressed as part of the new general plan. For many of the city's general plan elements, the goals and policies are implemented at the project level as part of the project's discretionary and environmental review process. That's when we're applying our various planning policies, safety measures, tree preservation, etc. However, for some general plan elements, such as circulation, conservation, and open space, there are a variety of non-project related programs used to implement the general plan, such as capital improvement programs that include a variety of pedestrian and safety improvements, the urban water management program, land acquisitions, and improvement projects. Moving on to the housing element annual progress report. This report includes a summary of residential housing and building permit activity, completion of the 5th cycle RHNA, which is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, implementation of the housing programs, the Housing Successor Agency Annual Report, and also the amount of reimbursement that the city sought last year from our LEAP grant. I do want to point out that the report that is submitted to the state is prepared using HCD forms and specific definitions that are adopted by the state. In addition to the items mentioned on this slide, HCD also collects data on the types of housing projects that are submitted to local jurisdictions, whether projects are approved or disapproved, number of streamlined applications, and also the requests for density bonuses, incentives, and concessions. This slide summarizes Table A of the report's Attachment 1, which documents new residential development applications between January 1st and December 31st, 2021. There were 130 applications submitted to the Planning Division with a total of 758 residential units. A total of 271 residential units were approved by the end of the year, and at that time, there were 27 applications still pending. I'm sure you might notice the reason for the difference in the number of units proposed versus approved is primarily because of one of the pending applications is for a large multifamily project, which contains almost 90% of those units. That project is expected to be scheduled for public hearing sometime this year and will be reported in the next annual housing element report. I'd also like to point out that per HCD, only formal applications that have been deemed complete are included in the housing activity summary. And also entitled projects by the Planning Division that have not yet received building permits do not count towards the progress of meeting RENA. This slide summarizes Table B of the report's attachment number 1. It documents the total number of residential units that received building permits in 2021. A total of 76 building permits for new housing was issued, which includes 60 accessory dwelling units, 16 single-family dwelling units, and 10 of those are for Woolsey Fire rebuilds. I do want to make one point regarding accessory dwelling units. Per HCD criteria, an ADU may only be counted as affordable if there is a long-term covenant or the property owner has provided evidence to the city that the ADU will be rented at an affordable rate or will be occupied without rent. Therefore, most of the permits that you see, they're all in the above moderate income category. This table summarizes the total number of building permits issued for the 5th cycle from 2014 to 2021. The city's RENA allocation was 255 residential units spread across the income categories. The city issued a total of 773 building permits over the 8-year period, which is approximately 96.6 units per year. Most of the permits issued fall predominantly in the moderate and above moderate income categories, with a deficit in the very low and low income categories. One thing to note is that although the total unit count exceeded the overall number of RENA units, the surplus permits issued in the moderate and above moderate income categories cannot be substituted or carried over into the very low or low categories. Therefore, the city met 57% of the target RENA allocation for the 5th cycle. As part of the 5th cycle housing element, there were 5 goals and 14 programs. And these are just a few of the highlights from the last 8 years. The city recently purchased a little over 4 acres for a project to develop a 100% affordable housing project. It also granted more than $1 million and served 31,521 people experiencing homelessness and those at risk, disabled seniors and low-income households. It also provided grants of more than $1 million to rehabilitate 119 low-income single-family units. There were also grants of almost $2 million to rehabilitate 393 multifamily affordable units, and the city invested more than $11 million for the acquisition and rehabilitation of 80 affordable units, all within the city. And finally, moving on to the Housing Successor Agency report. Back in 2012, there was the dissolution of redevelopment agencies, and as such, every year as part of our annual report progress, we are required to report on our expenditures, values, and inventory of assisted units. In 2021, approximately $150,000 was spent in administrative expenditures. The value of assets are over $36 million, and 6 units were assisted. Unfortunately, we do also have to report that there were 2 units lost to covenant expiration. In conclusion, the city has continued to implement the goals, policies, and programs within the general plan and completed the 5th cycle RENA. Moving forward, Staff is already working to implement the recently adopted 6th cycle housing element. The new housing element has additional programs and more than 40 more objectives with specific deadlines to adhere to than what was in the previous 5th cycle. Staff is currently focused on the inclusionary housing ordinance, and we're on track for that this year. We have the recently, as of tonight, adopted objective standards, and there are additional goals and policies which will be incorporated into the new general plan as part of the comprehensive update. That concludes my presentation on the 2021 General Plan and Annual Housing Element Progress Report. Staff's recommendation is to file and receive the report, and following tonight's council meeting, this report will be submitted to the state prior to April 1st. I am available for questions, and also here with me is Kelvin Parker, our Director, Advanced Planning Division Manager, Kari Finley, and also Lynn Ashita, our Community Development Analyst. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Any questions for my council colleagues? First off, Ms. Milda de Pena.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Mayor Engler. In looking at page 8, slide number 8, I should say, I'm struck at these numbers, 76 units, and none of it is affordable. It's not even moderate. It's above moderate. The goal of having accessory dwelling units was to make housing more affordable, but it doesn't look from the 60 that we have that is actually the case. And I'm surprised. Is there anyone that can answer a question as to why these units are so expensive? Are they luxury accessory dwelling units?
I can probably start by, first of all, discussing there's a difference between practically affordable and state-defined affordable. So ADUs might be actually practically affordable because they're smaller and they are less costly to build, but they don't qualify as a state-defined affordable unit because it doesn't meet certain criteria, such as an affordability covenant.
So if 10 of these ADUs were, say, less expensive than your average one-bedroom apartment, would they not count then as moderate or, as low income?
No, and that's because the state doesn't allow them to be counted towards the RENA-defined affordable units.
Not yet, unless there's a larger number, right?
No, unless certain criteria is met, such as an affordable covenant is recorded on the property, or some type of documentation that it will actually be rented to a person who qualifies for that affordable program.
And we can't mandate that.
No, we cannot.
Then how do we get them to be affordable?
It's really up to the property owner. Again, I want to make sure that you're using the term affordable correctly. You're looking at affordable from meeting our RENA obligations, whereas practically speaking, they might be affordable in the sense of they're not as expensive as other types of housing.
Not necessarily RENA obligation, but income based.
In order to qualify for a RENA unit, you actually have to go through a process. Lynn can attest to this. There's significant reporting and qualification process that you have to go through for an income-eligible person to rent an affordable unit that's identified by RENA. So it's not just showing a pay stub that say, I make this amount of money and I should get this unit for that amount. That's not how an affordable unit that's designated under the regional housing needs is processed. It's much more complicated and much more labor intensive and administrative intensive.
But, okay, I'm a little confused as to why does it need to be, if it's not counting toward RENA, can it not still be affordable?
It's counting towards RENA for above moderate. It's not counting towards RENA for an affordable, whether it's very low, low, or moderate. It's not counting for that unless it meets additional criteria.
Correct. But we can't determine our own eligibility for the city regardless of RENA?
No.
Where we say, you know, can this be affordable or can this be under $2,000 a month?
No, ADUs are ministerially processed. In other words, there's no discretion, as so long as it meets the objective development standards that are set forth in our municipal code, it's by right.
Okay.
That said, the property owners themselves do have the opportunity to do whatever they wish to do with the site. If they wanted to go through that process, provide that documentation and record the covenant or whatever, they have the option to do that. They also have the option to rent, as you heard, for zero. So in the event that they are putting a child or a parent in there, they have the
That's
opportunity
true.
to record that as zero.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions?
Mayor?
Mr. Adam?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is more of an observation. You know, I was really happy to see in the report to what great lengths the city is going to connect our city for pedestrians and bikes. You know, I got to thank Cliff Finley and Nada Hidari for continuing to push with this effort. I mean, we're putting in crosswalks on T.O. Boulevard, our mini freeway. We have bike lanes on all over the place. We have sidewalks on Los Feliz Drive, sidewalks on Kaneho School. Willow Lane has sidewalks and bike lanes. Ranchos we have sidewalks and bike lanes going in there. And this is a great effort to connect our city for people to walk and ride bikes. You know, I live for the day when this old model of visiting our downtown is we drive in, visit a store, go to the dry cleaners, whatever it is, and then drive back out. I live for the day when we live in the area and walk to these different destinations. To me, that would be the ultimate in city planning, and we're getting there. We're slowly getting there. You know, tonight we voted on a project that's going to have people, that's the missing ingredient, people living on the boulevard. And with this connectivity that Cliff and Nada are working on, that, you know, if you build it, they will come. And one of these days, we're going to see that. I'm convinced. So appreciate that, fellas, that keep that up. And Willow Lane's going to be spectacular when that's done. And that will ultimately connect what may be the Kmart T.O. Ranch project to our downtown. So I'm liking it.
Very good. Any other comments from my colleagues? Very good. We do have one public speaker online. We have Jackson Piper speaking again online.
Good evening again. Thank you to the City Council and to attending members of the public. My name is Jackson Piper. I'm a resident of unincorporated Newbury Park. I just want to comment a few things based on what's in the staff report. Obviously, we have the new housing element that just got approved, and so things are hopefully moving in a much better direction. But for the 2014 through 2021 housing element, you know, we produced a significant number of moderate and above moderate units, and a very, very small number of very low and low income units, specifically 31 very low and 2 low income units in that entire 7-year period, which equates to 37% and 3% respectively of the RENA allocation for that 7-year period. So what this indicates to me is that there's some lack of incentive, something that's not quite right with how we have our development process set up in Thousand Oaks that is preventing more people from choosing to develop affordable housing in the very low and low income categories. And I hope that what we have in the new housing element is addressing this, but I still think it's a good idea for the City Council, for planning staff, to brainstorm and look at the examples of other cities to see how this problem can be tackled, because it's pretty prevalent everywhere, but you know, especially in Thousand Oaks, we want to see more low and very low income units provided to help provide for that part of the community, because they do need help with housing. I want to echo what Al Adams said about the, his excitement about the transportation improvements. I think that's a very important part of this that doesn't quite get looked into a lot because it's not directly housing related. It used to be that you would think of housing as something that needed to be met within 30% of a household's income. But I've read recently that it's now measured more by 45% of a household's income going towards both housing and transportation combined. In a city like Thousand Oaks, it's basically set up for driving, and that incurs significant costs. If you can re-envision the transportation here to be more bike-friendly, more pedestrian-friendly, more public transit-friendly, which requires greater density where the transportation is going to actually go point to point, you can really reduce the costs associated with that part of life in a city like this. So improvement needed and hopefully happening, but please continue looking at ways the city can be transformed to lower the per unit cost of housing and lower the additional expenses of life here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piper. Do we have any other comments by our council members?
You looking for a motion?
Just a motion to receive.
Yeah, receive the report, 10B. Thank you very much for giving us that update.
Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones?
Aye.
And Mayor Engler?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Very good. Moving on then, we'll go to item 13, I'm sorry, item 13A. Item 13A is a report on the trip back to Washington, D.C. for the congressional meetings of the National League of Cities. The National League of Cities is an organization that represents us across the country, but mainly in Washington, and brings forth ideas to our lawmakers that we have input on. A couple of weeks ago, I was happy to go back and represent the city with the items that we wanted to bring to our congressional members. Among those really were a couple of things that were very good, and I think we had a very good trip back there. You may have seen the press release the other day where we did come back with $1.5 million. That has been a team effort over a number of years, going back to asking for $1.5 million to address some of our water needs via redoing a well in our Los Robles area. This will help get us off the state water project to a certain degree. Anything that we can do to make us more self-reliant as far as water goes is probably a good idea. And we were able to get $1.5 million toward that. We did meet with our congressional representatives, both Senator Padilla's office, Senator Feinstein's office, and at Councilmember Julia Brownlee's office. And at those offices, we talked about other programs that we would like to get put forward on their radar and toward our agenda. We're looking to protect some of our critical infrastructure. We have water pump stations that went down in our Woolsey fire a couple of years ago. Those we want to microgrid, and we're looking for funding from the federal government to help us with that. We're looking for storage tank rehabilitation, same with for our water infrastructure. Those were also damaged and were affected by Woolsey. One of the things that really was pointed out during the Hill portion of the Woolsey fire, the Hill Canyon fire, was that it cut off our workers, our people down in Hill Canyon. There's really only one way in and one way out of Hill Canyon sewage treatment plant, or wastewater treatment plant. It's on Hill Canyon Road. That road was cut off by that fire. Our employees had to shelter in place on the plant. What we're asking the federal government to help us with is building the bridge that will bring a secondary egress out of there and also provide egress for people that will come into our Wildwood Park area so that they don't have to park in the neighborhood on the mesa, but can park off of Santa Rosa Road. Serves a double purpose, but really it's infrastructure for our employees. There's several other things. We have roads. Some of our fire roads were damaged. We're asking for federal funding to help with that. And also, we're helping with microgridding further some of our generator sites. So there's quite a few things that the federal government, if you've seen the news lately, they have decided that they're going to be doing quite a bit of infrastructure work, and we wanted to make sure that we're on the ground floor with some shovel-ready programs to be able to tap into that. We also were able to respond to some incidents that have happened in our area. But before I get to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about our Hampshire Road. We did bring that as well for trying to improve our Hampshire Road, making it a multimodal cut through under our freeway. That's a big project. We are starting to lay the groundwork to be able to bring some money back from the federal government to be able to improve that intersection. We did also talk to them about the issue that has come up lately with some burglaries that are happening in our areas. They tend to follow the same modus operandi, the same MO of coming in from open space. These have been identified by our police force as possibly organized gangs of South American origin. One thing we wanted to bring to our representatives and also to both to our colleagues at the Customs and Immigration, that this is a problem that they need to address. We left Washington strongly making that point that the federal government does need to stand up and do their thing. We as a city are doing our bit. We have our police force has made several arrests in the last couple of months of these people, and we are doing what we need to do as a city to help protect our citizens. So it was a very successful trip. I think we have laid groundwork for future funding from the federal government, and the fruits that we were able to bring back this time, I think were pretty significant. So with that,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you for doing that. I've done a similar thing, and I know it's a lot of work and to try to get to the office at the right time, and maybe the congressman is there, maybe he isn't. And I know it's really a difficult thing to do, and I appreciate the good work that you did back there. I know those funds will be put to good use, and I also wanted to say that I appreciate your effort on the Hampshire Road, because if we're going to approve a large development at the Kmart site, we need to do something about the on and off ramps there, and hopefully we're on track to get some of those monies that were approved by Congress for infrastructure.
That's the plan, and the nice thing about going back and seeing people in person is that, as you can imagine, they receive numerous grant applications in paper. It does do us some good to be able to go back, see people face to face. That application will at least have a little bit of imprint on them as we go forward. So I think it's time well spent to go back there, but thank you. Mr. McNamee.
Thank you, Mayor. Fall of 2021, there was a meeting that was at the North Ranch Community Center, and the residents, about 100 or plus very angry residents, were there to ask the police department, what are you doing about the Chilean burglary groups coming into our city? And they enter in through as the mayor pointed out, the golf courses, open spaces, and enter their homes, burglarize, wait for a car out in front that's waiting for them, and they depart. So the question was asked, where's the FBI in this if they're coming in from Chile? And there was no answer. So I coordinated with some of the council members of our neighbor cities who also are being impacted. Simi Valley, Moore Park, Agora, Westlake Village, Camarillo. And we met with the FBI to ask them, what resources are you bringing to the table to address this, as well as what can we as a city do to stop this? And what revealed itself during that meeting is that the Chilean government is part of a treaty of 40 countries that allow for ease of travel under something called the ESTA program, Electronic System for Travel Authorization. The cooperating countries, 40 of them, United States included, uploads their criminal database for digital access by the country going to be visited. The way it works is that when someone applies for a visa of travel, 90 days or less for business or pleasure, they can apply online. And the country that they're going to can then go into the databases to access any criminal activity to grant or deny that ESTA visa program. Well, what has happened and became evident, the FBI says that this program has been going on for many years. However, the Chilean burglary groups have been doing the travel into the other 39 countries for the last 10 to 15 years. Chile, unfortunately, does not upload and make available its criminal database to the other 39 countries. So we're at a disadvantage here in the United States to see if anyone wanting to come travel to the United States has a criminal past so we can deny that visa. So my question was, what is being done by the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security? And they said, well, Chile has been on 5-year probation right now, and no action that they know of is being taken place. The FBI informed me that they are a branch of the Department of Justice, and they're an investigational arm, not a policy arm. That's what the politicians are about. So I said to them, what's the solution here? Well, one option, in my opinion, is that you discontinue the ESTA program and go back to the way it was done traditionally, is where if anyone from Chile wants to come to the United States, they go to the U.S. Embassy in Chile, and they apply, have their fingerprints taken, biometrics taken, background check done there before they're granted a visa. And until then, they're denied the ESTA program. The other option, as suggested, was that allow the United States and the other 39 countries to allow resources to go into Chile to help them digitally upload their criminal database. If they don't have the resources, the other 39 countries would be happy to do that. The United States is not the only one affected by the Chilean burglary groups. All the other 39 countries are also being affected for the last 10 to 15 years. This has been going on. So my question to our federal government is, why are you not protecting the American people? That's a challenge. Which is more important, ease of travel or doing paperwork in our embassy in Chile? I side on the side of the American people. Those people that were at the community center last fall, they were upset, and rightfully so. Our police departments do an admirable job trying to get this under control, but this goes to a higher level in the federal government, State Department, Department of Homeland Security, as well as the Chilean consulate. So my recommendation to the council here is to continue communication with our council member or our congressional member, Julia Brownlee, State Department, Department of Homeland Security, and Chilean consulate. And I wish to thank our mayor for taking this forward in Washington, D.C. I was unable to attend with them to present this. It's been going on for 15 years, needs to stop. And my understanding, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we will be in touch with Julia Brownlee's office to keep abreast of what's progress is being made in this regard. 15 years is way too long for this to be going on in the United States without action by our federal government. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McNamee. Any other comments from my council colleagues? Very good. I do have a couple of public speakers that we would want to get to. So let's, they're both, one online, and Mr. Nelson, Mr. Nelson, are you in the audience? Very good. Let me get the speaker online first, sir, and then I'll have you come down. Our speaker online is Lisa Manzo. Miss Manzo, are you online still?
She's not on.
She's offline now? Okay. Then very good. Mr. Nelson, come on down.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I appreciate it, Mayor, council members. My name is Scott Nelson. I've lived in Thousand Oaks over 20 years. I spent a good deal of time in the FBI in 10 or so different states. I've investigated burglaries, gangs of all sorts, Hells Angels, terrorists, Black Panthers, Agent Boys, Yakuza, the Bloods and the Crips, the Jewish Mafia, the Mexican drug cartels, bank robbery gangs, car theft gangs, and the Italian La Cosa Nostra, and on and on and on ad infinitum. What we're seeing in Thousand Oaks is not good. We've seen it for the last decade. What we're seeing in terms of cooperation with the federal government is not good. We've seen it go on and on and on ad infinitum. Coincidentally, I met a gentleman here at the meeting named Mark Ginsger. Mark couldn't stay. He has to travel tomorrow, and this thing is quite lengthy, this meeting. Mark's home was hit a couple days ago at 4:30 a.m. Somebody surveilled the property, just like the Chilean burglary group does. Somebody waited until he was gone from his house, just like this group did. Somebody broke in, masks, hoodies, gloves, and ripped them off big time. He called the neighbor who, like me, is an ex-FBI guy. That guy raced down there. The bad guys were gone. It's hard to say exactly who commits crime when crime is not effectively handled. We have a great police department here. We have politicians who care. We've seen that tonight. We have citizens who show up past their bedtime, me, to speak up and stand up. It's a great community. I've lived all over the place. I've lived in Newark, New Jersey, Baltimore, Maryland, New York City. I've lived in the Valley, in Studio City. Believe me, we need to do something more about this particular burglary gang problem. I can tell you the name of a celebrity. You've probably heard his music. This individual was also burglarized by the group. Therefore, what I suggest we do, and I'm sorry for going on, I'm getting ringed out of here.
Yeah, we have the 3-minute limit, so.
Sorry about that. What I'd like to do is ensure that maybe we do a little more coordination with the federal government. I suspect the council, the mayor, should go on record with our Congresswoman, Julia Brownlee, to get this thing fixed. Fix it. Get with the State Department, get with Homeland Security, get with ICE, and fix it. Thanks very much.
Very good. I think let me call over, if possible, Ms. Leba, because she was also in the meetings. Perhaps she can give a little bit of insight as far as some of the things we found as well.
Good evening, council members. It's good to see you. It's been a long time. As Mayor Engler mentioned, I did accompany him, as per my job, to Washington, D.C. And when this item came up, my big concern was, is this part of our legislative platform? And the reality is, technically it is not, but since we are in Washington, D.C., we use that opportunity because it had a crime nexus. We met with the National League of Cities, and in meeting with the National League of Cities, they said directly, Mina, this is a federal issue. This is not something that the city can just jump in and make any changes to. What we have a role to do is to inform our congressional member and our senators. That is what we did. And I want to tell you, as part of our meeting, we met with the Chief of Intergovernment Affairs for the Office of U.S. Customs and Border Control to learn about the ESTA program, because that information was not available online except for the process. In learning about the process and explaining what our concerns were, we were able to give a preview of what the concern was. He was able to do some research, and then this individual met with us. And he said specifically that this process is highly vetted. It is not just the Chilean criminal records that are reviewed. In addition to looking at Chilean criminal records, Customs and Border Control also looks at the FBI records. They look at Interpol. They look at immigration and customs enforcement records and information from the U.S. Consulate and the embassy. They also do biometrics and fingerprinting. And so what they did tell us was we did our job as informing, as a local government and a local constituent, our federal leaders. Because a lot of the information that we were trying to seek, unfortunately, is above our level. And when I say it's above our level, it's a matter of national security. So they cannot share more, but they can share it with their congresswoman. And yes, after we met with our Congresswoman Julia Brownley, a senior member of her staff has called me. And that member said, we are going to look into it. What information can you give me of who you met with? I will tell you, last week was an in-district week for Congress. They were in town. Julia Brownley was in town. My understanding is she had a high-level briefing as soon as she got home with our police chief and members of the FBI task force to give her information on what's going on. In moving this forward, she is going to continue to seek greater briefings from additional offices, and Councilmember McNamee, you mentioned them, ICE, as well as the State Department, to see where this process is and what potential loopholes there are. But it's my understanding, having spoken to the senior staffer just the other day, that they are moving this process forward. They're starting out locally to get all the information, and then they're going to move it through. Any type of decision to remove a country from the ESTA program would be made through the State Department and the White House. It is not something we can move forward because they have the national security information and records. So that is where we are from the standpoint that I understand it from our Congresswoman. And I think we've made a difference in at least bringing this forward because it was not on the radar. So I do appreciate Councilmember McNamee for sharing this with us and us having the opportunity to share it. At this point, figuratively saying we are passing the baton to the right people who should be addressing the issue.
Mayor, may I comment?
I just wanted to add one more piece to confirm something that Mina brought up. Chief Paris did meet at the request of Congresswoman Brownley's office with her and members of her team last week. The FBI meeting she referenced was a separate meeting. They were not part of that meeting direct. But one of the things, and Councilmember McNamee and Mayor Engler and I have had a lot of discussions about this individually, is the importance for us of we're making arrests. our police department is making arrests on a regular basis for South American theft crews, but it's putting a strain on our resources associated with that. And so we need greater collaboration from the federal government, specifically the FBI task force, State Department, and other agencies to be engaged. And by lifting this in profile is the way you get action. And so we're started down that path, and now we'll need to continue to keep our finger on that pulse.
Go ahead, Mr. McNamee.
When I spoke with the FBI in that meeting, again, where the other council members from neighbor cities were in attendance, they made it real clear that they're very frustrated with this. It's been going on 10, 15 years with no action from the State Department, Department of Homeland Security, anyone else in the federal government. And yet we're the ones being impacted here on the local level. And one of the challenges I have with government, whether it be local, state, federal, is everyone wants to stay in their lane. And I hear that this is a federal issue. We have no input on this, really, can't really affect change. It's affecting us on the city level. City manager just pointed out it's tying up our resources. We've got people losing $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a burglary run. That's a city problem, but it's being impacted by policy out of Washington. And I don't have tolerance for 15 years of this going on, and then the federal government turning around and telling us, thank you for bringing us to our attention. Don't they read the newspapers, the magazines, watch TV, get news reports? This has been going on for a long time in Thousand Oaks, Ventura County, California, and the United States. So I am not happy with this idea of saying, we passed the baton. It's off to someone else to take care of. No, I'm past this point. We need to continue pressure with Julia Brownlee, State Department, Chilean Consulate, Department of Homeland Security, President of the United States, our U.S. senators. This has got to stop. And there's easy solutions here. Stop the Chileans from coming in until they digitize and upload all that information, because I was told by the FBI they don't have access to it. So these people come in from Chile who are criminals. They do their burglaries, and if they're caught, they're released back into our community to either do more burglaries, or they return to Chile with someone else being flown in to replace them, and no prosecution takes place. And they're hitting the other 39 countries as well. We're not exclusive in the United States. All of them are getting hit. And this is coming from the FBI telling me. So that's my perspective on this, in the same way that, you know what, we need to keep the pressure up. We need to keep this front and center, because a lot of people in our community are being burglarized needlessly. And I thank our police department for doing a bang-up job of trying to stop the Chilean burglary groups. But their hands are tied, because you go to the source. The other group that is very upset over this is the Chilean nationals who have come here, who are now U.S. citizens, who are upstanding U.S. citizens embracing the American dream. And they're upset that the Chilean groups coming in here are tainting the good reputation of these people. Also, they came to the United States to become U.S. citizens to get away from the crime that existed in Chile. And they're telling me, now we're importing it and allowing it to come from Chile to the United States. We left Chile for the security of the United States, and now you're bringing it in? They are the most upset that I've spoken to on the phone. So I call to the people of Thousand Oaks. Contact Julia Brownlee, our two senators. Contact the president, Chilean consulate in Los Angeles. If you want a copy of my report, send me an email. I'll be glad to email it to you. But I'm not happy with this idea of saying this is not a city matter, it's a federal matter. No, it's a U.S. American matter. We're protecting Americans, not allowing the Chilean gangs to come in here. Allow the wonderful people of Chile to come in and travel and do business, but we've got to screen the criminals out. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember McNamee. I don't think, and I don't interpret what Ms. Labib was saying, is that we're not just going to hand this off and see you later. And you're right in that this is a local problem. We're being affected locally, and we're addressing it locally by enabling our police to do many things up in the areas that have been hit. And my compliments and my kudos to our sheriff for having made arrests and having put these people away. But it's a local problem, but it's a federal solution. And the federal solution, as you've laid out, is really, and I agree with Ms. Laban, it's not a solution that we can implement at the council level. So what we have done is we've alerted our federal partners of the issue. They were all very, actually, I will say with confidence that they were thankful that we had brought that to them. Now it's in their ballpark. It's in their court. We'll keep some tabs on it, see how they're doing, but right now it's in their court. Within a week, Councilmember Brownlee was meeting with our police chief, meeting with the FBI. So I understand the frustration of our public. I understand your interest in this, but we have to let this work through the federal government. And that's asking a lot of people to be patient, but we have started this ball rolling, and I think we need to let it get a little steam before we get too upset. Okay?
Sounds good. I understand your direction. I just say we keep the pressure on and make certain we get action. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. Any other questions? No. And did we ever get our one public speaker, Ms. Monzo?
No.
Very good. Then this is another just report. I don't think we need to have any votes on this. So with that, I will turn it over to our city attorney. We do have a, city manager comments, sorry. I always forget you, I'm sorry.
Madam City Clerk, do we need a motion on the recommendation to receive the report? I don't think we usually do take a.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a meeting 2 weeks from tonight on Tuesday, the 12th of April. Right now, we have 2 items slated for that evening. The first is an requested initiation of a municipal code amendment relating to cannabis. Request received from the 2 medicinal cannabis dispensaries in town for the council to contemplate an initiation of a code amendment to allow them to, right now they're permitted for medicinal, to allow them access to sell recreational cannabis. The second item is another initiation that will be on columbarium use for a local church. That is currently what we have slated for the main agenda items that evening.
Very good, thank you. And also, we're going now from our meeting, we'll be going into closed session. And I'll turn it over to our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have one closed session item tonight, a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation, Rosenthal versus City of Thousand Oaks, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. It is unlikely I will have anything to report, and just to confirm with the city clerk, we don't have any speakers on that.
That's correct, no speakers.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We will then adjourn our regular meeting and go into our closed session. Thank you all for coming and being such willing participants.